C-Post.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Nicole Ringer. I'm a fiscal analyst with KLRD, and I will be presenting the budget for the Kansas Commission on Peace Officers Standards and Training. With me, I have the Executive Director, Doug Schroeder. I apologize. Does your budget summary say Kansas Commission on Peace Officers Standards and Training, or is it cut off? Okay, sorry, there was an editing thing we'll have to fix. Okay, so the Kansas Commission on Peace Officers Standards and Training is a regulatory body that provides the citizens of Kansas with qualified, trained, and professional peace officers. It is also dedicated to adopting and enforcing professional standards for certification of peace officers to promote public safety and preserve public trust. ks.gov maintains a central registry of law enforcement officer demographics, qualifications, and employment history. They also conduct administrative investigations related to violations of the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Act and may suspend, revoke, or deny certification of a law enforcement officer. ks.gov has no state general funds. The two funding sources are the ks.gov fee fund and the local law enforcement training fund. More information on these funds is provided on page 5. Let's turn to page 2 and we get started on the fiscal year 25 analysis. The 25 approved amount was $1,071,265. The agency revised estimate was $1,081,476, which is $13,211 or 1.2% above the approved. This increase is due to item 3, all other adjustments, which was for increased salaries and wages expenditures, largely due to increased employer contributions to health benefits. The LBC had no changes to fiscal year 25. So are there any questions on 25 before I move to 26?
Any questions for the analyst on 25? All right, we'll go to 26.
Okay, it's fiscal year 26. The agency request is $1.2 million, which is $124,287 or 11.6% above the fiscal year 25 approved. This increase is largely due to the agency's enhancement request, which is item 1. They're requesting $103,364, all from special revenue funds, to add a supervisory investigator position to address the increased workload involved in investigating claims. This adjustment funds a currently vacant position. The LBC made a motion to delete all supplementals and enhancements, so this was the only change that the LBC made to the agency's request. The only other adjustment that the agency had was an increase of $20,923 for anticipated inflation costs across all expenditure categories, offset by a decrease in aid to local expenditures. Are there any questions?
Any questions on 26? Representative Howe.
Are these, thank you, Chair, are the special revenue funds a annually reoccurring fund? The word special is what's throwing me off here. Is that like a unique revenue fund that just happens occasionally, or is it something that happens each year?
So if you go to page 5, it talks more about it. The funding, it's $5 is deposited from the 2250 from the docket fees, and then $1 is deposited into the local law enforcement training fund. So Doug Schroeder can answer more questions on that. Huh? Oh,
Representative Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I have 2 questions. I don't know if you want to answer this one or the director. it says in the little sheet I got here, 6 to 10 month delay in presenting cases to the Commission for Investigations. Is that just because there's a backlog, or is it because you don't have enough people to clear those backlogs?
I will let Doug speak on his testimony.
That sounds like the same question, but it's really two.
Okay, I will try to address that. That's a good question. We have several cases that are getting stale because we don't have the investigator manpower to properly investigate those and present them to the commission. So those are taking much longer than what we want, much longer than I think our stakeholders should suspect or should expect. What that means is that we could possibly be letting officers that shouldn't have a license or should have their license revoked, reprimanded, or revoked out on the streets or applying with other agencies longer than what I think is appropriate and what I think all of our citizen stakeholders think is appropriate. That's the reason why I asked for one full-time investigator. We currently only have one full-time and two part-time investigators, so that would give us a significant advantage to getting to those cases in a more timely manner.
Okay, can I ask a follow-up on it? You say that there's more complexity in these investigations. Is that to do because you're seeing whatever it is you're looking at that you haven't worked before, or is it just more of coming into the agency to be looked at?
Yeah, very good question. Mainly due to technology. For example, if it's an excessive force complaint that we're looking into, not only is there body cam of the officer that's been accused, but typically car cameras, body cams from other officers. There may be street cameras, there may be flock license plate readers involved. So all of this causes us to reach out and get more and more data so that we can give the commission a clear picture so that they can take an appropriate action or not.
So what I'm hearing is that because of technology, it's taking longer to go through to build a case to present to the commission. Is that right?
Certainly, because we don't want to have a video out there that could either help or hurt an officer. So our investigators are tasked with getting all of that data and then watching it and processing it. Simply takes time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, if you don't mind, so are we saying that there is a consistent 6 to 10 month backlog, or that we have several cases and those cases have a backlog that are just 6 to 10 months? Make me understand that.
Certainly. So it is a consistent backlog of that long. Our commission, the investigative committee that initially makes a determination on the action, they meet quarterly. We rarely have a case that we get in that quarter via complaint or a employment action from the agency that we can present at the next meeting. It's almost 2 or 3 meetings down the road because they come in and we put them in queue. We put them in order of them coming in. And so we've had to set those back further than what we would like. And that's, again, why I've requested an investigative position. I will add to that, I know that all extra or enhancements rather, were stricken and may be looked at a one-on-one basis. The Department of Budget did also decline that. I appealed to the governor's office, and just this morning I saw it was included back into our budget.
And one follow-up, if I may. So it's your assumption that a single FTE would then be able to single-handedly bring that 6 to 10 month backlog down to something that's within reason?
It's going to make a significant dent into that. As I told during my appeal, I think I have justifiable statistics to request 2, but in all reality, I want to see what 1 will do. And if that'll bring us down to 3 or 4 months backlog, we know then that perhaps adding another might bring us to more quick resolution. So I certainly want to be a good steward of the state's resources, and therefore I chose to just ask for one position.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the analyst? Okay, thank you very much. All right, Director, good to see you, and you can go on with your testimony.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Some of which I've already covered. You have my written testimony, and that's simply what I wanted to overview here today. First of all, I'm looking at our numbers. This last year, in 2024, we had the highest number of cases presented to the commission historically. We also had more demographic forms processed and provisional licenses issued. That was at an all-time high. This has put strain on our staff. Now, we have done, I think it's an important and fair question that you would ask me what we have done to help alleviate some of those costs. So under bullet point 2, you'll see that we required law enforcement agencies to enter their own training. Previously, they were writing it down, handwriting it, or typing it, faxing it to us, which was just a duplication of labor because then our staff would have to input that data into the central registry. So that one fix alone saved approximately 200 hours of a full-time employee that we could repurpose elsewhere. We also got an ARPA grant, thanks to the legislature, that allowed us to digitize all of our past investigative records. So it is a much quicker process now, rather than pulling boxes and files to answer core requests that come about past investigations. And then finally, something that, saves us about 100 hours annually. And then finally, a future cost savings. It looks like we will be moving our location from our office in North Amidon to the office that is now owned by the Kansas Highway Patrol on 254 Highway just east of Keachai. KBI has part of that building, a footprint in that building, and they are going to move some of those operations to the campus of Wichita State University. So I've been working with Director Mativi, and we have a lease agreement in place. The nice thing about this is it saves the C-Post about $12,000 a year. And then secondly, instead of us paying a private building owner, we're helping to support the Highway Patrol by renting that available space from them. So those are areas we have tackled. Another thing that's I think is very important, we are at the point, if you've been in this committee the last 2 years, I've said the point is coming where we are going to have to change our fee-funded structure to increase it because it's not keeping up with expenditures. Currently, we get $5 from every docket-forgiven municipal court. So traffic tickets, most traffic tickets, not all, but criminal cases, they're assigned a docket fee and $5 of that comes to us. That unfortunately has been on an 8-year decline. I can't even point to COVID and say that's the culprit because it started declining well before COVID. So I've been forecasting that this is the year where we need to do something about that statute. And I think that we go in and we change the $5 amount to $10. And you can see that at its highest point was 2018, where we were funded $892,000. And then just this last year, it was down to $620. I've had folks ask why that may be. I think there's a couple of things. I've done some research. I called the Municipal Courts Clerks Association. They assure me they have a robust onboarding system so that their cases are being sent, the docket fees are being sent where it is, where they're designed to be by statute. I think one of the biggest culprits is some of the decriminalization of certain crimes, such as misdemeanor drug possessions or drug paraphernalia. There simply isn't that number of cases going through municipal courts as misdemeanors as there used to be. Coupled in the fact that not only is there an 8-year decline in revenue, as we all know, the dollar 8 years ago bought a lot more than the dollar does today. And so we'll be seeking a fee fund expansion.
Any questions for the director? Representative Resman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of the $22.50 that assessed and $5 comes to your organization, do you know where the rest of the money goes to?
Yes, I do. There is some money that is earmarked for the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center. There is $1 that is earmarked for a fund that is on the last page on your packet. It is a pass-through fund that technically gets collected, and then we distribute that. We don't use that money. I just looked this morning. There is a couple dollars that goes to judicial learning. I can't remember, but basically training for judicial officers. So there's a number of people with a small piece of that.
So every dollar is accounted for.
Yes.
Okay. So in order to go from $5 to $10, we'd have to raise the court costs.
Correct.
Representative Bloom.
Thank you, Chairman Avery. Good afternoon, sir. How many of these complaints turn out to amount to something?
So on average, we take and investigate approximately 170 cases per year, and the commission, on average, takes about 50 to 55 actions per year. Yes.
Any further questions for the director? Representative Resman.
I just did find out from research that 1150 goes to SGF, so about half.
All right. If there's no further questions, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well, that will close the budget hearing on C-Post, and we will open the budget hearing on the Adjutant General. Go ahead, Kyle.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kyle Anderson. I'm a fiscal analyst at KLRD, and I will be presenting the Adjutant General's Department budget. Starting on page 1, we have a brief summary of the data for the actuals of 2024 against the agency request of 2025 and 2026, and the respective changes that the LBC committee made. The changes are largely to do with the removal of supplementals and enhancements and a removal of the reappropriation associated with disaster funds in 2025. And if you turn to page 1, or page 2, I'm sorry, you can see a more direct breakdown of the actuals for 2025 and the respective changes of the removals in figure 4 are more apparent. The reappropriation line, you can see that the LBC removed approximately $1.5 million, and that's associated with the disaster fund removal of related to appropriations. The remaining appropriations are largely due to already approved building projects and related expenditures from holdovers on capital projects that were approved for 2024. The agency's initial request was an increase of $44 million over the approved budget and $2 million over the SGF approved budget for 6.1% SGF and 38.9% overall. Moving to item number 2, this was a request for KDEM state matching fees, and the LBC removed this $400,000 SGF request. Number 3 was a supplemental request for 1.6 million SGF and 13.6 million all funds for state disaster relief associated with the listed disasters. The LBC also removed that request. Item number 4 is the ARPA fund request associated with the reconstruction and changeover remodel of the State Defense Building here in Topeka, Kansas. And the LBC requested no change of that request. Item number 5 is a request for $12.9 million for pre-disaster mitigation funds. And these funds are used to carry out a number of actions across the state to alleviate the deleterious effects of state disasters and other containment measures and training associated with preventing disasters. The LBC made no requested changes to that $12.9 million ask. Item number 6 is the Military Construction National Guard Bees Fund increase of $2 million. And this goes to various expenditures for Army National Guard and Air National Guard, Army National Guard facilities across the state. And that is largely associated with construction projects at those facilities. The LBC made no requested change to that $2 million request. Item number 7 at the bottom of page 4 is associated with a reduction of $837,067 in EMPG grant funds, and this is associated with a 9 to 10% reduction in the amount that the federal grants are actually paying. And the LBC made no requested change to that request. Item number 8 is a $6.4 million reduction in National Guard operations federal fund expenditures, and this is associated with a Defense Act appropriations money for capital improvement projects expenditures expected in 2025. Item number 9, all other changes, is a reduction of $50,651 in 1.73 FTE positions. The positions are largely a result of a decrease in the administration program and positions from emergency management and homeland security, and the expenditure funds are a result of reductions in the nuclear safety emergency management program. Are there any questions about fiscal year 2025?
Any questions for 25? Let's go to 26.
Turning to page 6, for fiscal year 2026, you can see that in figure 6 that the agency request is a decrease of $58.8 million from the 2025 amount, and an increase of $4.4 million from the 2025 approved amount, or 4.7% increase. As with 2025, the enhancement requests were removed by the LBC request, and that again includes the State Disaster Fund request that is largely attributed with the same state disasters as 2025, and this in part has to do with the amount of time that it takes to actually clear through all the appeal requests for money and the clearing out all the necessary fixes for the disaster damage. Item number 2, the Trimley White Readiness Center, is the conversion of an armory from the U.S. Army Reserve that was provided to the Adjutant General in 2023. And they're looking to do updates and repairs to convert it to the 35th Division Artillery Headquarters. That request was also removed by the LBC. And the last is, like the 2025 request, a request for KDM monies, and that is associated with making up some of the funding difference for the EMPG reduction grants. Item number 4 is a change in the state general fund funding for 2026, and this is a reduction of $1 million, and that's a reduction in the disaster fund monies, and it's partially offset by increases in emergency management and homeland security expenditures. Item number 5 is like the listing in fiscal year 2025, the Emergency Management Performance Grant, a reduction of $837,067, and that's a result of reduction in the amount being paid by the federal government. Item number 6, the Military and National Guard federal funds is a reduction of $2 million. And that is, again, expenditures associated with Army National Guard facility capital projects, and just a difference in the amount of contracted expenditures associated with those construction projects for 2026. Number 7, the National Guard Military Operations Fund is a reduction of $7.6 million, and this is associated with a number of expenditures related to anti-terrorism, environmental compliance within the Adjutant General's Department, and other related minor construction projects reductions. Item number 8, the disaster grants and pre-disaster mitigation is a reduction of $10.3 million. This is, again, the expenditures to alleviate the effects of disasters and associated construction projects to minimize those effects, and a expected reduction from the amount spent in 2025 for said operations. Item number 9 of all other adjustments of $43,359 reduction, and the same 1.73 FTE positions removed in our fiscal year 2025. Any questions on fiscal year 2026?
Any questions on 26? All right. Thank you, Kyle.
Would you like me to cover the capital budget?
Yeah, you go over that.
So if you turn to page 10, this starts the capital budget section of the agency, and a number of these projects were previously approved, and so they're largely reappropriations of the same funds as the construction projects are not necessarily let in the year of expected expenditure. The first of these is the state fence remodel. As previously stated, this was approved in 2024, but not actually completed. So that $22.9 million request was kicked forward, and that includes $472,862 of SGF. Likewise, the Hayes Armory was previously approved. That is a request of $15.8 million in SGF for construction of a new armory in Hayes to remove the current armory that lies in a floodplain and provides complications associated with that existence in a floodplain. Item number 3 is an increase of $7.4 million for rehabilitation and repair, including $4.8 million in SGF funding. $3.3 million in SGF was previously approved, so this is only an increase of $1.3 million in SGF funding for the year from the prior approved amount. Item number 4 is the Kansas City Active Nature Restoration, a request of $5.7 million to restore the Kansas Readiness Center after damage from a flood that destroyed a number of walls, doors, and ceilings in the lower levels of the building. as well as some of the mechanical and electrical systems throughout the building. Item number 5 is the Trimley White Readiness Center for $5 million. And this is the Army Reserve facility that was donated in 2023 to be converted to the 35th Artillery Division headquarters. Item number 6 is the Greatman Field Maintenance Shop addition. A request of $500,000 in federal funding to extend the size or build a new maintenance shop and convert the current shop into from existing radar bays into further maintenance space. Moving on to the capital improvements from 2026. The first item is the request for rehabilitation and repair monies of $10.5 million, including $4.5 million SGF. $3.5 million was approved previously for 2025. So this is an increase of $1 million SGF above that. Item number 2 is the Forbes Energy Resilience and Conservation Investment Program. This is to build a 2 megawatt system on the Forbes Field facility to maintain energy segregation. That includes a 500 kilowatt solar array, a 1 megawatt battery storage system, and a 500 kilowatt battery emergency backup generator. And that's a $5.9 million request from federal funds. Item number 3 is the Fort Riley Readiness Center, and that is an increase of $1 million in federal funds and will result in consolidation of 4 other regional readiness centers into 2 multi-unit readiness centers, resulting in a divestment of Clay Center, Junction City, and Building 59 at Fort Riley Army National Guard Enclave. Any questions on the capital projects?
Any questions on capital improvements? Representative Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. 2 things. Is the Hayes Armory in the process of being built, or are we still in a holding pattern?
I will have to yield to the agency. I am not entirely certain of the exact status of the construction at this moment.
You know, we've been talking about this for over 2 years, and there was some discussion when this first all came about that they were looking for a suitable piece of property, land, to build the new armory, which I think they've actually said is on the north side of I-70 now. But that's been close to 2 years now. And I was just wondering, you know, where we're at on that, because is what I was told is time is money. I was just wondering what the holdup is, if I could ask that.
I will yield to the agency on the details of that.
Yeah, you can answer it now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Weigel. So yeah, you're correct, sir. This is taking quite a while. So to run through the dates with the committee, the money was approved by the legislature in 2022. On December 5th of 2023 is when the Kansas Military Board approved the site purchase specifically. And so one of the things that was holding the project up is that the site is on the north side of I-70. The utilities were all on the south side of I-70. So before we would purchase the property, we had an agreement with the landowner that required them to run all the utilities to the site and to have it annexed into the city of Hayes. So that basically placed all the risk on the landowner instead of the state to tunnel under I-70 and do some pretty complex engineering for that. So they worked throughout basically 2024 to do that work. And then we closed on the property The purchase was closed September 30th, 2024. So we will break ground here in the spring as soon as the weather is able to support that construction project. So I expect a groundbreaking March, April timeframe at this point.
Okay. Can I be invited to that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further
Thank you,
questions
Mr.
for our analyst? Representative Blue.
I was wondering why you're divesting the 4 regional readiness centers and putting them into 2.
I will yield to the agency on their decision to make that choice as well.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Bloom, I'll have to get some more information on that and get back to you. I'm sorry. Yeah.
All right, any further questions for our analyst? All right, thank you, Kyle, appreciate it. All right, you can come on back up here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Keith Marshall. I'm the legislative liaison for the Adjutant General's Department. Normally, my boss would be here to do this, but he sends his regrets. He is traveling today. His son graduated from the Air Force Cyber Analyst School down in Mississippi, so he traveled down there to his son's graduation. So I'll be the one delivering testimony today. So you have my written testimony in front of you. Unfortunately, it was prepared before the governor released her budget. So now that I have that information, I can work off of that. And what I'm going to focus on, instead of going through everything that I submitted for written testimony, are the items that are discrepancies between the governor's budget request and the LBC's request. So the first thing I want to look at is disaster relief reappropriation. That's $1.553 million. So to walk you through the disaster relief process, we have a disaster in the state. KDEM works with local authorities to do damage assessments and determine what damages there are and how much it's going to cost to recover from that emergency. So from there, they determine if it meets the threshold for a federal presidential disaster declaration. If it meets that threshold, then the governor makes that request of FEMA and the president, and then they go through their process, and eventually the federal government will make that declaration of a presidentially declared disaster. So when that disaster is declared at the federal level, that unlocks the federal funding that comes with the declaration for recovery, so we can work with the local authorities in doing the recovery efforts after the disaster. But that federal money also comes with state matching dollars. So this is something that we have requested of the federal government. They have provided the money for, but we enter into an agreement with them that we will match to a certain extent. I think it's 75% federal, 25% state and local, of which 10% is a state of Kansas cost. So that's where that reappropriation is coming from. Our base budget year to year for disaster relief was $1.5 million. So we had a carryover from 2024 that we're asking to be reappropriated of $1.55 million. And then we also have a enhancement request of $1.6 million. So that brings it up to a total of approximately $4.6 million for FY25. That $4.6 million is what we estimate the state of Kansas will owe in disaster payments in total for 2025, if that makes sense. So then 2026, I'm going to look at on page 3 of my testimony under budget enhancement requests. That is the KDEM state disaster payments FY26 SGF for $2.3 million. That's our enhancement request for FY26. So if you add that to our base budget for that, that's a total of $4.8 million. Sorry, $3.8 million. So we anticipate in FY26, the state of Kansas will owe $3.8 million in disaster relief. So that's where those FY25 and FY26 disaster relief numbers that we have and are requesting come from. And then I have 2 other items that are enhancement requests that were not included in the LBC. One is the KDEM grant funding for FY25. That's $400,000 in SGF. That is a reduction in a program called the Emergency Management Performance Grants. Those grants fund operations for KDEM, essentially. And so things that are impacted if they don't have that money or a way to make up that money from SGF is their training, planning, exercises, disaster response and recovery. It's a pretty significant piece of the KDEM budget. And then the same thing for FY26. We requested $852,000 at FY26. The governor's budget request limited that number to $500,000. So we support the governor's budget request. We are requesting $500,000 for KDEM grant funding makeup in FY 2026. So, Mr. Chairman, those are the items that are different between the governor's budget request and the LBC. So I will stand for your questions.
Any questions for the agency? How many of your 299 FTEs are full? Or how many vacancies do you have?
Okay, I'll have to get back with you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Any further question? Well, Representative Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I didn't mean to give you a hard time. It's just that I'm kind of involved with that out there. We'll put it this way, does the Army and Air National Guard combined, do they, when there's a disaster declaration by the governor or whatever, do they coordinate their assets to go out there? I mean, if they use Black Hawk helicopters or whatever, I mean, do they get together and say, here's the best approach to do this? And if you do that, how do you arrive at that decision? Is it just strictly, we got to go do this, or is there an economic factor that's involved, or, in that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Weigel, thank you for the question. So we only respond when requested. So if there's a disaster or emergency, the local authorities have to request the National Guard response through KDEM, and then KDEM works with our Joint Operations Center in the Kansas National Guard to determine the best capabilities that we have that match the request, and then we send out response, whether it's Army or Air. Our Joint Operations Center matches up our capabilities with what the local authorities need.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it. Well, that will close our budget hearing with the Adjutant General. Tomorrow, we will have a budget hearing on the Board of Technical Professions, and then we will have budget recs on EMS, Sentencing Commission, C-Post, and Adjutant General. Are there any comments? And I just wanted to shout out our two guests today. The Minority Leader joined us today, Representative Woodard, and happy birthday to Representative Hoheisel as well. But if there's no other comments, we're adjourned.